Okay. Hey, welcome to the Saving with Steve show, where we talk about the ins and outs of money, pretty much everything under the sun that relates to you having a happier, healthier relationship with money. This is a special recording because we've had a power outage and I've had to go down the line to another office and use my hotspot. So hopefully we're going to have a good time. We're going to get all the stuff there. Hey, last week we talked to Sophia Mendel from Value Ping when she was discussing the best credit cards to use if you're traveling, whether you're traveling domestic or worldwide. I'll also be talking about the retirement saving benchmarks to keep you on track. But first we have Matty Lansdown. He's a scientist, nutritionist, podcast host, health coach that specializes in weight loss, self-confidence for professional women and busy moms. Matty has a weekly podcast on how to not get sick and die. That's special. It provides his followers and clients with deep dive into nutrition and how to develop healthy habits that last. So, Matty, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate the invite. I'm looking forward to unpacking whatever we talk about.
Well, you know what? What a lot of people don't realize, and they maybe do, maybe they don't, but they go on these paths where they're just eating horribly and they're not really taking care of themselves, and it causes them health issues. As a result, health issues cost money. And prolonged health issues, you know what? It's a shorter life and it's a less fulfilling life. So when we have an opportunity, whether, somebody's in Australia like you or somewhere else in the world or here in the States, that can really provide some useful information that can impact the quality of somebody's life, it makes a difference. Our audience loves to hear it. So first of all, I'd like to just start unpacking, why does the diet culture cause more problems than it actually cures?
That's a really good question. And it's interesting, that I guess this whole podcast is about finance, because diet culture is fundamentally a marketing strategy that results in the income of money for businesses in the short term and limited results for clients. And it's that instant gratification. Every health challenge or weight loss challenge seems to be getting shorter and shorter. Once upon a time, it was, everybody knew that it would take some time because it took some time to develop this body and this situation. And then they sort of came down in size. It was 6 months, 3 months, 28 days, 2 weeks, getting smaller and smaller. But the genetics of the body haven't changed in that time at all to adapt to that kind of behavior. And now we've got, arguably some scam companies out there that sell detox teas, which, have made millions and millions and millions of dollars, which are essentially laxative teas. That's not a good thing for the body. And so the diet culture essentially is the idea that you can get a massive return on very little investment, and that you go in and out, basically, and you sort of go all in for a short period of time, and then you feel deprived, you feel restricted, you haven't had the food you like, you're probably hungry, and then you just go, I'm out. And so you go back to, once the program's over, or even during the program, you're like, screw it, I'm going back to pizza and chocolate and wine because that made me happy. And so the space that I work in is working with the real cause of the problem of our health issues, because I think diet culture doesn't address the real cause, and neither does a lot of the things that happen in the hospital. And I worked for 7 years in a cancer research hospital as a scientist, and it's often just band-aiding the problem. So companies are selling weight loss, right? Everybody wants weight loss, everyone wants to look good, but nobody then peels the onion to look at what is underneath the behavior that's driving that, like those decisions that happen in your life. And often it's got a lot to do with self-confidence, emotional eating, sugar addiction, eating when you're stressed, being in this world of abundant dopamine. And what I mean by that, dopamine's the happy hormone. So we've perpetually got access to social media, sugar, all these things that make us feel good in some way for a microsecond. And we just keep chasing it down the rabbit hole. We're all dopamine addicts to some degree. And Facebook in Silicon Valley, has a giant floor of psychological engineers that are working every day to make their app more addictive to your dopamine pathways. The exact same things happening in the sugar industry. So, it's not just, I need to know which nutrition to eat. In my experience, I've spoken at conferences all over the world, retreats, wellness events. I've never met a person that didn't know meat and vegetables was a good idea. Everybody knows what to eat. The question is, why don't I eat it?
Hold on one second. Sorry. I got to pause this. That was wonderful. So go right ahead. I do want to add in one thing real quick here, even though we got interrupted. I was listening to what you said, and my wife does this thing called a 21-day fix, where she's supposed to work out so many times a day. She reduces what she's eating and all that kind of stuff. But quite frankly, for 21 days, she's miserable. I mean, her emotions are all over the place. And, 21 days, she loses some weight, it's all great. But you know what? About 3-4 weeks later, it starts coming back on. Those habits are gone. And, she hates, it's one of those things where she has to build herself up. So, okay, I got to do this. I got to look good for this. I got to look good for that. And it doesn't work.
Totally. Well, and that's because a lot of those programs use the metric or use the tool of willpower. And you don't have to go far in your own life, maybe this week, to realize willpower didn't last very long. And it's not designed to last very long. It's not a function of the brain that's designed to last a long period of time. And so when you are setting your mind up for misery and knowing that things aren't going to go well and you're not going to feel good, but you're going to get this tiny little advantage that'll make you, feel good for about 5 minutes. And then it's obviously so meaningless that you give it up straight away. Like the process hasn't gone deep enough. Like we've got to peel the onion, and it's not just about behavior change and habits. It's about an identity shift. And like you want to decide to be a different version of yourself from now on. And that's not an easy process. That's, that takes some work, some deep work, and looking into the reason that the current version of you flourishes, because it's the same with money habits, right? It's the same with any habits in our life. There's a reason that what we do now is what we do by default. And that's usually because our central nervous system and our reptilian brain, the deepest part of our brain that developed first, it is always seeking security, safety, and certainty in the environment so that it can predict that we won't die today, which sounds like an extreme example, but evolutionary biology says that we're always scanning our environment to make sure that is true. And so if we've lived a life where we unconsciously adopted these money beliefs or habits from our parents, our food habits from our parents, or the people in our environment, and we've never really considered them before, we're just on autopilot. And then we do realize that, these things are in place. They weren't mine to decide. I inherited them. And now that I'm aware of them, it's really hard to change them because I've been safe and secure and certain of my environment living this way for my entire life. I haven't died in like 40 years, I'm still here. So the central nervous system it basically operates on the idea of the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. Even if intellectually and academically, you can make sense of why it would be better. And sure, it looks, when I see other people on Instagram rocking these amazing, healthy lives, it looks good, but I'm safe over here. And so that's why we use willpower to pretend to be someone else when actually we need to transform into somebody else.
That's so true. That's so true. Okay. So one of the other questions that I wanted to bring up here, and let's unpeel this, but we'll have to take a break in about 2 minutes. But it says, weight loss is not about food, it's about psychology.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to unpack that, but I want to say something here, and I'm not trying to boast for myself. I've been a workout guy all my life. Mm-hmm. And I know that if I do things consistently on a daily basis, eat consistently on a daily basis, and kind of have my I call them little rhythm registers, like I do every single day, I'll stay within this certain, weight. I'll feel good. My joints won't hurt. My back won't hurt, all that kind of good stuff. And, quite frankly, my wife thinks it's nuts because I'm just so robotic and I don't have a problem eating the same thing every single day. So, I understand that. But when we start looking at, understanding how weight loss is really not about the food, it is about the psychology. I need you to break that down so people can understand why, it is about the psychology and not always about what you eat.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think it comes back to just sort of what we've been discussing already, which is that it's so easy to get pleasure. People might not think that eating a little piece of chocolate is like safety or security or all of those things. But when we're stressed, our hormones, cortisol and adrenaline go up, which tells our mind and our central nervous system that there's danger. And so we naturally want to swing to the other side of the spectrum, which is dopamine and serotonin, which is happiness, pleasure, or even oxytocin, which is like human connection and safety. And so the fastest way to do that is with man-made, heavily manipulated, refined sugars and carbohydrates, because they feel pleasurable. They're mouth pleasure. They're not pleasure for any other part of the body. And so we have to figure out how in our mind we can access those dopamine and safety, security, certainty mechanisms that not from food. And that's a significant part of what I do in my program. It's learning to identify in your environment other ways to get those needs met that are not with food, whilst simultaneously changing the narrative that you have in your life about the struggle and the stress and the pain. Because, again, we've got to come at it from both sides. We've got to address the problem, but we also have to come up with a different solution.
That's wonderful. Hey, look, you know what? We're going to need to take a quick little break. So please stick with us. We'll be right back with more Saving Steve. We're going to talk about your ins and outs of money. So stick with us. We're going to pay some bills and be back in a few seconds. Okay, great. Cameron, we just finished segment 1 with Matty Lansdown. I'm going to take a quick little break to make sure the people that are waiting for me aren't waiting too long. So I'm going to be right back. Matty, just give me. Hey, I really want to truly thank everyone for letting your friends and family know, hey, we have well more than 600,000 people listening to the show. Just in the United States and internationally, it's over 60,000. You know what? If you want to check out some of the replays, you just go to savingwithsteve.us. If you're enjoying the stories of helpful insights with Saving and Steve, I encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Google Play. So you don't miss a show. You can check us out on a few of our affiliates at UK Health Radio, BBS Radio, Talk Radio, New York City, as well as AM/FM 247. All these networks are dedicated to empowering you to solve problems, uplift your spirit, and live a life of personal and financial freedom. If you'd like to follow us on Facebook, you can always go to Saving with Steve Sexton for guest gifts, replays, the whole shot. So, hey, we're back with Matty Lansdown. You know what? This is just unbelievable. If you're looking at the dieting side of things, the psychology behind it, we're talking about it all. It's really important that you understand some of these things when you go into dieting, and especially if you've been through that cycle of dieting where, hey, you're doing good for a couple months and then you just go off the rails. So, you know what? We have Matty Lansdown. You know, it's wonderful. He's got this wonderful podcast. You really want to check it out because it can make a difference in your life. And I just love the title. I'm sorry, I just messed up my little script. So Cameron, you're going to have to edit that part out. But he's got this cool title. So it's a weekly podcast. And Matty, when does the podcast run? What days?
Wednesday here in Australia, and so Tuesday for the US.
Okay, perfect. And the podcast is named How to Not Get Sick and Die. Very simple, very straightforward. But you know what? I'm just going to say this. When it comes to talking about the ins and outs of money, the healthier you stay, the less money you spend, the less of your money falls through the cracks to healthcare that you don't want to. And you know what? If you stay healthy, you can redirect those things. So it's what's important to you, like having wonderful experiences and so on, being with family members and all that. So let's keep talking to Matty here. I got some questions that I want to get in here. Let's talk about low carb nutrition for weight loss and emotional eating. Ooh, mm-hmm. That's a topic we got to unpack there.
Yeah, sure. So I guess there's two different concepts in that question. So emotional eating, basically every single human, at least in the Western world where we've got privilege, excess of food everywhere, is an emotional eater. If you eat at your desk whilst you're working, you're an emotional eater. If you eat with your phone in your hand whilst watching TV, you're an emotional eater. If you eat while you're driving, you're an emotional eater. And the idea of somebody that emotionally eats is to identify, am I eating food when I'm not totally 100% present with what's happening in the current moment? And often in all of those situations, we're distracted by something else. And you might even be in a situation where sometimes you eat or you you even like you get some chocolate or something that you really want to enjoy and you eat it and you don't even remember eating it because you weren't present. And you're like, oh my God, the packet's empty already. I need another one. And so the catch with emotional eating is that we use things, and this is the same for men, even though men might feel weird about some of these words. We use it for comfort. We use it for nurture. We use it to soothe all of these uncomfortable emotions that we may be aware or not aware that are coming up, which is stress, discomfort, anger, frustration. It might be a fight with your partner, and you might find that there's a loop that every time you come together to solve the problem or to get over it, you order a pizza. Like, we're using food to solve emotional problems. And a lot of this happens because, one, the dopamine situation that I mentioned before of like making us feel like we're back in control and we're understanding what's going on, and the food is these dopamine spikes is allowing us to feel that the stress is going down. We're back in the driver's seat of our own life. However, obviously putting that food into our body is tearing our body down. It's meaning we're going to get brain fog. We're going to gain weight. We're not going to be able to focus. Our performance is going to be limited. And that, obviously you can connect that to not making great money decisions. And the other thing too is that the world is becoming so automated that there's no pain response in the brain when you part ways with your money. And that's what they discovered with the credit card when they first discovered that if you delay the pain of giving up the finance, that you could get so much more money out of people whilst they were just stuck in the first decision of making the purchase. And so we've got the same situation with the food we make. It's like you are not connected through your phone to the actual expenditure of the money emotionally. You're not connected to it leaving your bank account. You press a couple of buttons inside of Uber, and it's getting to the point where basically Uber, or maybe even Amazon Prime, the next step is that they will literally feed you, like they'll literally put the food in your mouth. And so there's no connection to what is this food doing to me, or what is the money expenditure on this stuff doing to my bank account, And so we've got to reconnect all of those dots, which were once really natural because we'd hand over physical cash and be like, oh, I'm giving away something that I've earned. Like right now I'm making a trade. Is this a worthwhile trade? And it's the same thing we have to think about with food, because if we're eating high sugar, high refined carbohydrate diets, anything in a bag, a box, or a can that's man-made, it's highly likely that it's manipulated in an unfavorable way for your biology. Then we're making that same decision without thinking about the consequences, because obviously we don't have a feast and we gain 10 pounds in one sitting. It's the same thing. We eat all this food and the consequences come later. But we're not really connected to them. And so we need to understand, I guess, that moving to a nutrition, or an approximate nutrition plan that resembles how humans survived the first 500,000 years is where we need to head. Because even though there's all this amazing technology and all these different foods that exist in 2022, our genetics have not changed in thousands and thousands of years, which is why we have, no matter how good medicine is becoming and how great calorie counters are becoming, we've got a world that is overweight, sick, and dying at younger ages than ever before. And that's because we've got a food industry and also like a social industry that doesn't support health. And why would they want to? Because healthy people don't buy drugs. Healthy people aren't addicted to their phones. There's a lot of economic incentive in these companies to keep you unwell and to keep you unfocused and not performing very well, but performing good enough that they can get some productivity out of you for their company. And so we have to move to a dietary template, generally speaking, that resembles, how humans have survived for thousands and thousands of years. And in most parts of the world, that's going to be low carbohydrate. Now, it's really important, especially for women, to know that that's not no carbohydrate. There's a very big difference. When I speak about no carb, it's refined sugars and carbohydrates. You can have all the vegetables you like. Even though like vegetables are 99% carbohydrates, most of them. So vegetables are a very, very important part, particularly for women's menstrual cycles and that type of thing. The other thing is in this world is with that low carb nutrition template is that there shouldn't be a list of foods that you can't have, because that psychology of not being allowed to have something is why diets fail. You get to the end and you're like, oh, I finally get the chocolate. I finally get the wine. I finally get the pizza back. And so you can't, like, as soon as we have this narrative between, I really, really want it, don't do it. Really, really want it, don't do it. Like everybody knows who wins, right?
That's just a takeaway.
Yeah. Totally.
That's like,
So,
it's like the kid jumping, I want this, and you're just right here.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because inside my program, that's exactly how we do it. It's the conversation between the inner child and the inner parent. And it's like a tennis match, and the inner child wins every time, which is why yo-yo diet culture exists.
Oh, it's so funny, because everything you're talking about, I've done. I mean, I used to like red licorice, and my wife would buy a big one of those big containers from like a Costco or a warehouse store. And I could eat that thing through the weekend just by walking between the couch and the pantry. And it was real easy. And I finally said, you can't buy those anymore, because that's me. And, the reality is it's my trigger. I grew up loving red licorice. So I don't eat it anymore because it causes me a stomachache, because I'll eat the whole container.
Yeah, totally. Well, and a lot of our behaviors like that are connected to childhood stuff for many people, or some kind of pain or difficult situation that happened in their life. And when we unpack that to find what is the cause of this, it's often an uncomfortable truth, which makes total sense why we go towards sugar, because it comforts us. It fills the gap of soothing us.
Oh yeah, no, every time you talk about that, so I think back to when I was a little kid, because I was I was an overactive kid. I had like Ritalin back in the day, and I stopped taking Ritalin when I stopped eating sugar. And then my grades all of a sudden got really, really good, and I got really smart all of a sudden. But that's the reality of it. You know what, Matty, this has been wonderful. I want to thank you for being here today, but I would like to take a few minutes and have you talk about your podcast, how people can get a hold of you, whether it be through the internet, by phone. I know you're in Australia, but I think people all over the world need your help.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So my website is just mattylansdown.com. So www.mattylansdown.com. So you can check out a bunch of things there. I've got a Facebook group, which is designed for women and busy mothers. So come and hang out there with us. I'll send over the link, Steve. And where else? The podcast. How to Not Get Sick and Die. So it's it's being described as a one-stop shop for health and wellness. We've got phenomenal guests, and I do a lot of solo episodes myself. So yeah, come and hang out. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share that, Steve.
Matty, this has been wonderful. You know what? I'm going to say this, 85% of our listeners are female between the age of 45 and 65. And when I started sharing about what you do and all that stuff, and it was, the resounding response was, oh yeah. So, you know what, I think you might have a few people come and take a look at your podcast and take a look at your website to see how you can help them. So again, I want to thank you so much for joining us and shedding the light on many of the things that we all struggle with, and that there's an actual answer, which is very, very cool. And with that, I just wish you to stay safe, stay healthy. And you know what? I would love to have you back sometime soon.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Steve. And same to you. I appreciate your time and energy and this connection. And yeah, hopefully people get something out of it.
Great. Hey, look, guys, stick with us. We're going to be right back with more Saving with Steve. Okay. Hey, welcome back to the show. I would truly want to thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you letting your friends, family, and associates know about the show. All the replays are available at www.savingwithsteve.us. If you're enjoying the stories of helpful information and insight in Saving with Steve, then I encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel or Google Play channel so you can never miss a show, and check out a few of our affiliates at UK Health Radio, BBS Radio, Talk Radio New York City, E360 TV. All these networks are dedicated to empowering you to solve problems, uplift your spirit, and live a life of personal and financial freedom. You can also follow us on Facebook, join the Saving with Steve Sexton Insiders Club, get all the guest replays, exclusive gifts, and so on. You know what? We just finished with Matty Lansdown. You know what? It's time to talk. We're a little more than halfway through the year. It's a great time to start looking at your retirement saving benchmarks to make sure you're on track. How do you know if you're on track for retirement? What are the benchmarks? As you save for retirement, it's beneficial to know how much to save, whether you're on the right track. From everyone's situation is different, of course, but there are some useful retirement benchmarks that can give you some sense of how you're doing to reach your goals. After comparing your numbers to the benchmarks, you can then work on making any necessary adjustments and then check your progress on a regular basis. To set your retirement savings benchmark, you need to consider two factors: how much you've already saved for retirement at your current age, then compare your savings against your current gross income to begin setting savings goals based off your income. So what is a good retirement savings goal? Many financial institutions experts have a few guidelines to help answer those questions. Now, for example, when it comes to Fidelity, has created the following set of benchmarks on ages for people that are 50 or 60. So if you're looking at 50 years old, you should have 6 times your annual salary. Okay, what does that mean? If you're 50 and you make $30,000 a year, you should have about $180,000 saved. Okay, if you're 55, it's 7 times, 60, it's 8 times, and 67, it's 10 times your annual salary. Another benchmark concept aimed to replace nearly 80% of your current annual income in retirement, so you can maintain your lifestyle once you retire. Of course, the big unknowable is how long you will live and how long should your savings last. Okay. Now, here's an example of using the 85% rule on life expectancy. Say you were born in 1970, you're now 51, and you want to retire at 67. You'll retire in 2037. Let's assume your annual income is $40,000. If you expect to retire in 20 years, after retirement, you'll need $32,000 times 20, or $640,000 in retirement savings. Then you want to look at the 4% rule for retirement withdrawals, another widely used benchmark to help you determine how much your retirement saving you can afford to withdraw each year in your retirement. The 4% rule is name indicates, it suggests that you withdraw 4% of your retirement balance. Now, there's many financial experts that are actually saying, hey, instead of a 4% rule, you need to take a 3% rule. The reality is you need to have something comfortable on a distribution standpoint. You need to look at your average rates of return, where you're looking at, okay? When determining how much you need to save, it also help consider, these 3 things: the amount. Experts suggest saving at least 15% of your pre-tax income annually if you can. Counts. Factor in your other sources of retirement income, such as Social Security benefits, employer pensions, investment, retirement accounts, rental accounts, any part-time employment, asset mix. The higher the percentage of retirement savings in stocks, historically speaking, the higher your portfolio will have a rate of return. But you also have to take a look at reducing that risk as you get closer to retirement, because the last thing you need is what's happened recently, where you've seen a 20 or 30 or 35% drop in your retirement assets. So it's important to pay attention. After aiming for these benchmarks, you discover you're not on track. Don't lose hope. Focus on what you can do to help you get back up to speed. That might mean revving up your annual savings, opening or funding a retirement account, investing less conservatively, or using a health savings account to save for retire for medical costs. Hiring a good financial advisor can be useful too. The professional can show you ways to keep on track, work with you to keep on track, and so on. So it's really important to look at those benchmarks, find out where you're at, and keep pushing towards your goals, because retirement is a long-term accumulation event. The key is to accumulate as much as you possibly can. And you know what? I want to thank you all for joining us today on Saving with Steve, where we talk about the ins and outs of money. Today, we had Matty Lansdown. He was talking about the proper way to diet and how to get past those triggers that keep you going back and not being able to lose weight, or you lose the weight and gain it back. He works with people all the time. You want to go to his website. He's something special. With that, I wish you all well. Stay safe, stay healthy. We'll look forward to seeing you next week right here on Saving with Steve. Bye-bye. And Cameron, that's the end of the show.